Welcome to Ash and Iron, where we dig through the ashes of history to find the iron truth beneath.
A 70-year-old man in full armor charges into hand-to-hand combat. The year is 1565. The place is Malta. Ottoman cannons have been firing for 3 months straight. The walls are rubble, the hospitals overflow with wounded. Everyone expects the old man to die today. He survives and kills the men who came for him. This is Jean Parisot de Valette, the Grand Master who held Malta against 40,000 Ottomans, with 700 knights and 8,000 soldiers who refused to surrender. If you are not subscribed, starting with Geriatric warriors seems unconventional, but I respect the enthusiasm. Let us begin. 1523. Jean Parisot was born in Provence to minor French nobility. Nothing about his childhood suggests legendary future. Another noble son destined for military or religious service. At age 20, he joins the Knights Hospitaller, the warrior monks who run hospitals and fight Muslims with equal dedication. By 1522, the Hospitallers are in crisis. Sultan Suleiman the Magnificent besieges their island fortress of Rhodes. 6 months of bombardment, 6 months of desperate defense. Valletta is there, a young knight fighting his first major siege. The Hospitallers lose Rhodes despite inflicting massive Ottoman casualties. Suleiman is so impressed by their courage he lets them leave, with their weapons, their dignity, their holy relics intact. A rare gesture of respect between mortal enemies. The knights become exiles, wandering the Mediterranean without a home. For 8 years they drift, unwanted by European powers. Finally, in 1530, Emperor Charles gives them Malta, 3 tiny limestone islands in the middle of nowhere, barely habitable, strategically positioned, better than nothing. The Hospitallers accept and begin building fortifications immediately. Valette rises through the ranks over decades of service. He fights pirates, raids Ottoman shipping, commands galleys in brutal naval warfare, gets captured by Ottomans in 1541, spends a year rowing galleys chained to an oar, pulling until his hands bleed. Ransomed eventually, returns to Malta harder and angrier than before. By 1557, age 62, he becomes Grand Master, leader of an order that once ruled Rhodes, now ruling 3 rocks in the Mediterranean. 1565, Sultan Suleiman decides Malta must fall. The island sits astride Ottoman supply lines to North Africa. Hospitaller galleys raid Muslim shipping with impunity from Maltese harbors. Suleiman has tolerated this long enough. He assembles the largest Ottoman fleet since the Siege of Rhodes. 193 ships carrying 40,000 soldiers and skilled engineers. Commanded by Mustafa Pasha, an experienced general who besieged Rhodes decades earlier. The fleet sails in May. Arrives at Malta on May 18th. Valette watches from the fortifications, counting ships as they anchor. He is 70 years old now, ruling 700 knights. 8,000 Maltese militia and Spanish soldiers stand with the knights. Total defenders, roughly 9,000 against 40,000 attackers. The odds are mathematically absurd, strategically hopeless. Valette sends messengers to Sicily, begging for Spanish reinforcements immediately, then prepares Malta for the longest summer of its existence. The Ottomans land and immediately target Fort St. Elmo, a small star fort guarding the entrance to Grand Harbor. Mustafa Pasha estimates it will fall in 5 days maximum. 5 days of bombardment, 1 assault, the fort will surrender. Then the main fortifications of Birgu and Senglea become vulnerable. Valette knows St. Elmo cannot hold forever against that firepower. But every day St. Elmo survives is another day for reinforcements. He orders the fort held at any cost. Any cost. The bombardment begins May 24th with 60 cannons firing simultaneously. Solid stone walls crumble under the impact of iron balls. Defenders rebuild breaches at night using rubble and whatever materials remain. Ottomans fire again at dawn, destroying the night's repairs. The cycle repeats daily with mechanical, murderous precision. Inside the fort, defenders endure hell that exceeds human tolerance. Constant noise, constant danger, no sleep, little water. Men die from cannonballs, from falling masonry, from heat exhaustion. Knights volunteer to reinforce the garrison, knowing it means death. They row across the harbor at night, slip into the fort, replacing dead men, joining the doom. fulfilling their oaths. After 2 weeks, Mustafa Pasha is furious that St. Elmo stands. His 5-day estimate has become an embarrassment before his officers. He orders mining operations, digging tunnels under the walls, impact tunnels with gunpowder, detonate, collapse entire sections at once. The fort shrinks daily as walls explode and positions become untenable. By June 23rd, after 31 days of siege, St. Elmo falls. The Ottomans storm through breaches and slaughter every defender still breathing, behead corpses, mutilate bodies, crucify knights on wooden crosses, float the crosses across the harbor toward Birgu.
A message for Valette about what awaits his other fortifications. Valette receives the message and responds with his own statement. He heads Ottoman prisoners, loads their heads into cannons, fires them back across the harbor toward Ottoman lines. His message is equally clear. We play by your rules. St. Elmo cost the Ottomans 8,000 dead for one small fort. Mustafa Pasha now faces Birgu and Senglea with a depleted, exhausted army. Summer heat intensifies, water runs short, disease spreads through Ottoman camps.
July brings the main assault against Birgu and Senglea. The fortifications are stronger, the defenders more numerous. Valette himself commands. Ottoman cannons pound walls day and night without pause. 65,000 cannonballs will hit these fortifications before summer ends. The sound is constant, deafening, mentally destroying. Defenders go deaf, go mad, keep fighting because Valette demands it. Valette is everywhere during the siege. 70 years old, he refuses to direct from safety. He walks the walls during bombardment, inspecting positions, encouraging men. Wears full armor despite the heat that kills younger soldiers. When assaults come, he is there with sword drawn, not directing from behind, fighting in the front ranks. Ottoman sources call him a formidable old man with grudging respect. August 6th, the massive assault hits the post of Castile. 10,000 Ottoman soldiers charge the breach in coordinated waves. The fighting becomes hand-to-hand, brutal, desperate on both sides. Valette hears the alarm bells and runs toward the breach. 70 years old, sprinting in full armor toward the heaviest fighting. He arrives as defenders begin to waver under relentless Ottoman pressure, plants himself in the breach and starts killing with methodical efficiency. The Grand Master fights like a young knight with old man's cunning. His presence steadies the line. Defenders rally around him. The assault breaks after hours of combat and mountains of corpses. During the fighting, Valette takes a wound to his leg, not serious, bleeding heavily, clearly painful for a man his age. His officers beg him to retire, receive medical treatment, rest briefly. He refuses, continues directing the defense while blood soaks his armor. Only when the position is secure does he allow doctors near him. Even then, he returns to the walls the next morning. The Ottomans are learning that taking Malta will cost everything. Every yard of ground requires hundreds of lives, every breach fills with dead. By September, Mustafa Pasha faces impossible mathematics. He has lost over 20,000 men for minimal territorial gain. Disease ravages his camps worse than defenders' arquebuses. Supply ships from Constantinople arrive irregularly, sometimes not at all. Winter approaches, making Mediterranean sailing treacherous for heavy fleets. On September 6th, Spanish reinforcements finally arrive from Sicily. 8,000 fresh soldiers land on the northern coast. Not enough to defeat the Ottomans in open battle, but enough combined with Malta's battered defenders to attack. Valette orders an immediate offensive before Ottomans can reorganize. The combined force hits Ottoman positions weakened by months of attrition. Mustafa Pasha, seeing the situation deteriorate beyond recovery, orders withdrawal. The great Ottoman fleet sails away on September 8th, leaving 30,000 dead on an island they never conquered. The defenders count their own losses as Ottoman sails disappear. 9,000 soldiers held the fortifications in May. 3,000 remained standing in September, many of those wounded, 2/3 casualties sustained over a summer of continuous combat. Every knight is wounded at least once, many multiple times. The fortifications are ruins held together by determination and corpses. Grand Harbor is a graveyard where thousands drowned during naval assaults. But Malta remains Christian, the hospitals survive, Europe is safe. Valette immediately begins planning a new city on Mount Scabarras, where Fort St. Elmo once stood. A fortress city will rise. Designed by the finest military engineers in Europe, with walls thick enough to withstand any future Ottoman bombardment. The city will be called Valletta, in honor of the man. The 70-year-old who stood in breaches and refused to surrender. European powers shower Malta with gold for the reconstruction effort. Pope Pius declares Valletta Defender of the Faith and grants enormous honors. Kings send letters of gratitude and promises of future support. The Knights Hospitaller are heroes across Christian Europe. Construction on Valletta begins in 1566. Valette oversees the project personally despite his age and accumulated wounds. He wants to see his city rise before he dies. But on August 21st, 1568, Jean Parisot dies, age 73, from a stroke while inspecting construction. He never sees Valletta completed, never walks its finished streets. The knights bury him with honors in the crypt he personally selected. His tomb reads simply, "Here lies Valette, worthy of eternal honor." The city rises over his bones for the next decades. Valletta becomes one of Europe's most beautiful fortress cities, still standing today, still bearing his name 450 years later. A monument to the man who refused to surrender Malta. What survives of Jean Parisot de Valette beyond the city's stones? The Great Siege of Malta becomes legend across Europe immediately. Painters depict the desperate defenses. Poets compose epic verses. The story spreads because it seems impossible, because it is impossible. 700 knights and 8,000 militia cannot defeat 40,000 Ottomans. Except they did, and a 70-year-old man led them personally. Valette proves that leadership means standing in the breach yourself, not directing from safety while others die for your strategies. He could have commanded from the citadel, sent younger men forward. Instead, he grabbed a sword and charged at age 70. His presence on the walls during bombardments was militarily unnecessary, but psychologically essential. The men fought harder because he fought. The Ottoman Empire never seriously threatens the Western Mediterranean again. Lepanto happens 6 years later, further breaking Ottoman naval power. But Malta was the turning point. The siege that stopped expansion. Suleiman the Magnificent dies the next year, never recovering from the failure. The dynasty begins its long decline from the Malta defeat. Valette also proves the Hospitallers remain relevant in changing times. 300 years after their founding, they still matter militarily, still fight with medieval dedication in an increasingly modern world. The order survives another 230 years ruling Malta, until Napoleon takes the island in 1798. But then they do not disappear. They adapt. Again. Today, the sovereign military order of Malta still exists as recognized state, with no territory but full diplomatic relations across the globe. Descended directly from Valette's knights who held impossible wars. In Malta, his name appears everywhere you look today. Valletta the capital, streets named for him, statues in his honor. The Maltese remember the summer when everyone expected them to fall. When a 70-year-old Frenchman decided they would not. When 700 knights made 40,000 Ottomans retreat in shame. The siege where old age proved no barrier to courage. If you made it this far, you just learned about Geriatric Badassery. Jean Parisot de Valette charged into melee combat at 70 years old, got wounded, refused medical treatment, kept fighting until victory. Built a city that still bears his name half a millennium later, which proves rather conclusively that retirement age is a social construct, and sometimes the best response to impossible odds is refusing to acknowledge them. Subscribe if you enjoyed septuagenarian warriors teaching Ottoman armies about respect. I will see you in the next one.